She walked into the grandest gala of the year, polished, powerful, the CEO who had built her empire from nothing. The chandeliers glistened, the cameras flashed, and for a moment, it seemed like history was being rewritten. But in a single shocking instant, the night turned into a nightmare. A billionaire white family, blinded by arrogance and prejudice, did the unthinkable. Their slap wasn't just against her, it was against everything she stood for. But what came next? Not even they could have imagined, because she wasn't about to stay silent. And their billion-dollar empire would never be the same again. Amara Lewis was no ordinary woman. From the crowded streets of her childhood to the glass towers of the corporate world, she had fought for every inch of respect she owned. As the CEO of a rising tech empire, she had become a symbol of what determination, intelligence, and vision could achieve. Invitations to the most exclusive circles of wealth and power now carried her name. On that night, the gala wasn't just another event. It was the celebration of a billion-dollar partnership that promised to reshape the future of her company. The ballroom sparkled with wealth. Crystals caught the light above her, gowns and tuxedos shimmered across the floor, and whispers of business deals echoed between clinking glasses. Amara moved with quiet confidence, her head held high, her black silk gown flowing like armor in a battlefield of egos. Cameras followed her every step. Journalists scribbled her name in headlines before the night was even over, but beneath the glitter there was tension. She could feel it in the lingering stares, the half-smiles, the unspoken question hanging in the air. Did she really belong here? Some celebrated her presence, but others, the old guard of privilege and inherited power, looked at her like an unwelcome guest trespassing on sacred ground. Amara ignored the whispers. For her, tonight was about more than appearances. She was sealing a deal that would put her company on the global stage, a partnership with one of the wealthiest families in America. It was supposed to be a night of triumph, proof that barriers could be broken. Yet, as the music swelled and her glass was raised, she didn't know the moment was already slipping into history, not for her success, but for the storm about to erupt in front of everyone. The first hours of the gala unfolded like a carefully orchestrated performance. Waiters glided across the marble floor, serving champagne and delicacies, while the orchestra's music filled the air with elegance. Amara mingled with investors, dignitaries, and journalists who admired her poise and resilience. Every smile she offered, every handshake she extended, carried the weight of the years she had fought to be here. Tonight was supposed to mark the victory of merit over privilege, but not everyone in the room viewed it that way. The Worthingtons, the billionaire family hosting the gala, had agreed to partner with Amara's company after months of negotiations. They were old money, bound by legacy, their influence stretching across industries. To them, the gala was more than business. It was a stage to showcase power. And while they had reluctantly accepted Amara's brilliance, their pride had not accepted her presence. Whispers spread as she approached their table. Guests leaned closer, some curious, others uneasy, as if anticipating something about to unfold. Amara kept her stride steady, her gown brushing the polished floor, her eyes locked on the family whose signature was about to change her future. The Worthington matriarch greeted her with a cold smile. Her husband barely looked up from his glass, and their son, the heir to the empire, stared with thinly veiled disdain. The exchange began politely, businesslike, but beneath the words there was a tension thick enough to silence the music. It started with subtle barbs, questions about her background, patronizing remarks about her remarkable rise. Guests nearby pretended not to notice, but the discomfort was spreading. Still, Amara answered with dignity, her calm presence only sharpening the contrast between her grace and their hostility. Then came the moment that shattered the room's fragile veneer of civility. The son, emboldened by arrogance and the crowd, leaned in closer. His words dripped with venom disguised as jest. He questioned her worth, mocked her place at the table, and with a smirk raised his hand. The sound echoed through the hall, a sharp, humiliating crack that silenced the orchestra mid-note. Gasps rippled across the crowd, glasses froze in midair, and every camera turned. A billionaire's hand had struck not just a woman, but the most powerful black CEO in the room. Amara stood frozen for a heartbeat, her cheek stinging, her pride wounded before the eyes of the world. The Worthingtons didn't flinch. They sat as if nothing had happened, as if her pain was invisible. But the room had seen it. The investors, the journalists, the guests, they had all witnessed the mask of wealth and civility slip away, revealing something darker. Some looked away in shame, others whispered nervously, but all knew that what had just happened would not stay confined to this ballroom. Amara's mind raced. Anger surged beneath her composure, but so did clarity. This wasn't just an insult. It was a defining moment. The slap was meant to remind her of her place, but instead, it revealed theirs. And as she steadied herself, the silence in the room became a stage waiting for her next move. Would she endure the humiliation for the sake of the deal? Or would she rise, risking everything, to show the world that her dignity could never be bought? The gala was no longer about a billion-dollar contract. It had become a battlefield for something far greater. For a long, breathless moment, the hall stood frozen. Amara's cheek still burned, but the sting was nothing compared to the weight of the eyes upon her. The slap wasn't just a private insult, it was a public declaration, meant to humiliate her into silence. The Worthingtons expected her to bow her head, to swallow the shame and continue the evening as though nothing had happened. That was the script they had written for her. But Amara had lived too many years rewriting the scripts that others tried to force upon her. Slowly, she straightened her posture. Her chin lifted, her shoulders squared, and her eyes locked on the family who had dared to strike her. Gasps fluttered through the crowd as she reached for the contract. Lying on the table, a thick stack of papers representing months of negotiations and $1 billion future. The Worthington patriarch smirked. Certain she would cling to it, certain she valued the deal more than her dignity. But then, with a calmness that cut deeper than any shout, Amara tore the contract cleanly in two. The sound of ripping paper cracked louder than the slap, each shred falling like a verdict onto the pristine floor. The crowd erupted, some in shock, others in awe. Investors leaned forward, journalists scribbled furiously, cameras zoomed in. Amara's voice didn't need volume. Her presence spoke louder than words. She turned her back on the family, her gown flowing like a banner of defiance as she walked away from the table, away from the deal, and away from the chains of their arrogance. The Worthingtons sat stunned. For the first time, it was not their wealth nor their power that dominated the room, but their disgrace. The humiliation they had tried to inflict had reversed, exposing them before an audience of their peers. Amara reached the center of the ballroom and paused. Her silence commanded the space more than any speech could. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her next move. She had just sacrificed a $1 billion deal, but what she gained in that moment was far greater, because dignity, once defended, can never be taken away. The silence that followed was deafening. Amara's footsteps echoed through the grand hall as she left the Worthingtons behind, their legacy crumbling under the weight of their own arrogance. The gala, once a symbol of power and prestige, now stood as the stage of their public disgrace. But Amara didn't look back. She walked out of the ballroom with her head high, the sting of the slap already transforming into a fire that no wealth could extinguish. Outside, the cameras flashed brighter than ever. Reporters swarmed, desperate for answers, and in their lenses the world saw not a victim, but a woman who had chosen dignity over dollars, self-respect over silence. News spread like wildfire. By morning, headlines across the globe carried her name. The image of her tearing the contract became a symbol, an act of defiance that echoed far beyond the gala. Social media ignited with voices rising in her defense, hailing her as a leader who had shown that no amount of money could buy silence in the face of injustice. The Worthingtons, once untouchable, found themselves cornered. Their empire, so carefully polished, now bore the stain of scandal. Investors withdrew, Allies distanced themselves, and the very arrogance that led them to humiliate her now fueled their downfall. As for Amara, she did not retreat. The deal she walked away from became a catalyst for greater opportunities. Companies and communities that had once doubted her now rallied to her side, drawn not only to her vision, but to the strength of her character. She hadn't lost $1 billion future. She had claimed something priceless. Her story became more than a headline. It became a question for everyone who watched. What is the value of dignity in a world that measures worth by wealth? And how many more must stand like Amara to remind us that respect can never be handed down from privilege? It must be claimed even in the face of power. The gala was supposed to define her career. Instead, it defined something far greater, a truth no slap could silence.